One of the things that I love most about my show is that when I travel the world, a lot of people tell me that we inspire them to want to bake. We inspire them to, want to go to culinary school.
There are very few shows in the history of American reality television that managed to do what Cake Boss did. Walk into living rooms across the country, smell like powdered sugar and buttercream, and never quite leave. For nearly a decade, viewers tuned in week after week to watch a loud, passionate, larger-than-life baker from Hoboken, New Jersey, turn flour and fondant into something that felt genuinely magical. The show was not just about cakes. It was about family, about legacy, about what it means to pour your entire soul into something and dare the world to look away. And for a long time, the world did not look away. But television is a fickle thing, and even the sweetest stories eventually come to a bitter end. This is the story of how Cake Boss rose from a small-town bakery into a cultural phenomenon, and how it all came crashing down. To understand Cake Boss, you first have to understand the man behind it, and to understand the man, you have to go back to Carlo's Bakery on Washington Street in Hoboken, New Jersey. That bakery was not just a business. It was a heartbeat. It was the kind of place where the ovens never fully cooled and the smell of fresh cannoli drifted out onto the sidewalk before sunrise. It was founded by Bartolo Valastro Sr., an Italian immigrant who believed that good food made with honest hands could build something lasting. Bartolo Jr., the boy who would one day be known to millions simply as Buddy, was born on March 3, 1977, the fourth of 5 children. He grew up inside that bakery the way other kids grew up on playgrounds. While his friends were outside, Buddy was watching his father roll dough, watching his mother frost cakes, watching aunts and uncles and cousins move around each other in that small, flour-dusted kitchen like they had choreographed it for years. And in many ways, they had. Baking was not a hobby in the Valastro household. It was a language, and Buddy was a fast learner. But life has a way of interrupting even the most carefully written stories. In 1994, when Buddy was just 17 years old, his father died of lung cancer. Bartolo Sr. was gone, and suddenly the weight of an entire family legacy landed on the shoulders of a teenager who was still figuring out who he was. By any reasonable measure, the situation should have broken him. Instead, it built him. With his mother Mary standing beside him as a source of unwavering strength and guidance, Buddy stepped into his father's role with a determination that surprised everyone, including himself. He modernized recipes, expanded the menu, and slowly began transforming Carlo's Bakery from a beloved neighborhood staple into something with genuine ambition. For years, Carlo's Bakery was exactly what it appeared to be, a very good bakery in a small New Jersey city. Word of mouth carried it far, and customers who discovered Buddy's elaborate custom cakes became loyal evangelists for the place. But it took a television producer with a sharp eye to recognize that what was happening inside that bakery was not just commerce. It was entertainment. It was drama, humor, passion, and craftsmanship all packed into one unpredictable, family-run operation. In 2009, TLC launched Cake Boss, and the show was an immediate sensation. The premise was deceptively simple. Follow Buddy Valastro and his family as they run the bakery, take on extraordinary cake orders, and navigate the beautiful chaos of working with the people you love most in the world. But what the cameras captured was anything but simple. Buddy had a magnetic personality that translated perfectly to the screen. He was loud without being obnoxious, confident without being arrogant, and genuinely funny in the way that only people who have never tried to be funny truly are. The cakes themselves were extraordinary. Buddy was not interested in making wedding cakes that looked like other wedding cakes. He wanted to build things, edible sculptures that pushed the boundaries of what anyone thought possible with sugar and fondant. Life-sized replicas of race cars, towering architectural wonders, cakes that moved and blinked and told stories. Viewers who had never given a second thought to the art of baking found themselves genuinely astonished, episode after episode. The show sparked a nationwide conversation about culinary artistry and elevated cake decorating from a trade skill to something closer to high art. Just as importantly, Cake Boss gave America a family to fall in love with. Buddy's sisters Grace, Madalena, Mary, and Lisa each had their own distinct personalities. His brothers-in-law Joey Fogno and Mauro Castano were pillars of the operation. Longtime employees like Danny Dragni and Sal Pisanich gave the show texture and warmth and continuity. The bakery felt lived in and real, because it was. And at the center of it all stood Buddy. Father, husband, boss, and artist, holding everything together with sheer force of will and an almost supernatural love for what he did. At its height, Cake Boss was not merely a television show. It was a brand, a movement, and a legitimate cultural force. Spin-offs multiplied quickly. Kitchen Boss, Next Great Baker, and Buddy's Bakery Rescue all found their own audiences. Carlo's Bakery expanded, opening additional locations that drew tourists and superfans from across the country and around the world. People who had never been to New Jersey made pilgrimages to Hoboken simply to stand in the shop where their favorite show was filmed, to buy a lobster tail pastry, to maybe catch a glimpse of Buddy behind the counter. Buddy himself became a celebrity beyond the baking world. He appeared on talk shows, graced the covers of food and lifestyle magazines, and released cookbooks that sold in impressive numbers. He competed against his friend and rival Duff Goldman, the founder of Baltimore's Charm City Cakes and star of Food Network's Ace of Cakes, in specials that delighted fans of both bakers. The two men had a genuine friendship built on mutual respect, a relationship that added warmth and authenticity to everything they appeared in together. For a time, it seemed as though the Cake Boss empire had no ceiling. The show was proof that passion and family and a willingness to work obscene hours could produce something genuinely beautiful, on screen and in the display case. But nothing built at that speed and scale avoids the inevitable gravity of overexposure. By the mid-2010s, the market was saturated with Cake Boss content, and familiarity had begun to quietly erode the magic. Viewers who once greeted each new episode with genuine excitement started approaching the show with something closer to routine indifference. The cakes were still impressive. Buddy was still Buddy. But the freshness was gone, and in reality television, freshness is everything. The competitive landscape had also shifted dramatically. New baking shows had emerged, sleeker, more innovative, more attuned to the evolving tastes of an audience that now had more entertainment options than ever before. Programs that brought fresh formats and new personalities began drawing viewers away, and Cake Boss, for all its charm, began to feel like a relic of an earlier television era. Then came the controversies, and they came hard. In 2013, reports emerged that workers at Carlo's Bakery had been paid below New Jersey's minimum wage, some allegedly receiving as little as $5 an hour when the law required significantly more. The allegations painted a picture of a workplace that did not reflect the warmth and family values the show had spent years broadcasting to the world. Buddy denied the claims, but in 2014, he reached a settlement with the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development, agreeing to pay back wages and reform his workplace practices. The damage to his public image was real and lasting. Also in 2014, Buddy was arrested in Manhattan on suspicion of driving under the influence. The arrest made headlines and struck a particularly harsh note because the Valastro family brand had been built on wholesomeness and responsibility. A DUI did not fit that narrative, and the media made sure the public knew it. The show also drew criticism for an episode featuring transgender celebrity Carmen Carrera, in which her gender identity was used as the punchline of a prank involving a cake. Advocacy groups and viewers were vocal in their condemnation. In a television environment that was becoming increasingly conscious of representation and dignity, the episode felt tone-deaf at best and deliberately offensive at worst. The backlash contributed to a growing sense that Cake Boss had lost touch with its audience. A separate lawsuit filed in 2015 by a former employee alleged a pattern of inappropriate workplace behavior, including a hostile and intimidating environment. The lawsuit generated significant media coverage and added yet another layer of negative association to a brand that had once seemed bulletproof. Ratings, which had already been softening, began to fall more sharply in 2015 and 2016. The combined weight of overexposure, shifting viewer tastes, and a series of damaging controversies proved too heavy for the show to carry. What had once been one of TLC's signature programs was now struggling to hold an audience, and by 2017, Cake Boss came to its quiet end. The cancellation did not arrive with fanfare or a dramatic finale. It came the way most television endings come, through the gradual disappearance of renewal conversations and the slow realization that the chapter had simply closed. The last episode aired, and then there were no more. The end of Cake Boss was not the end of Buddy Valastro. He is not someone built for stillness. Carlo's Bakery continued operating, and Buddy expanded his business interests in ways that suggested genuine reinvention rather than retreat. He opened Buddy V's Ristorante in Las Vegas, bringing his Italian culinary heritage into the fine dining space. He continued working in television, appearing in competition formats that played to his strengths as both a baker and a personality. In September 2020, Buddy suffered a severe injury when his right hand, his dominant hand, the instrument of every extraordinary thing he had ever built, was impaled by a mechanical pinsetter in his home bowling alley. The accident required multiple surgeries and months of agonizing rehabilitation. By November 2023, he reported recovering approximately 95% of his hand's strength. The injury and the recovery became their own kind of story, one that reminded anyone watching why people had admired Buddy Valastro in the first place. He does not quit. He never has. It would be easy to remember Cake Boss only through the lens of its decline, the lawsuits, the controversies, the rating slide, the cancellation. But that would be an incomplete and unfair accounting of what the show actually was and what it actually did. At its best, Cake Boss was a genuine celebration of American craftsmanship. It told millions of viewers that working with your hands is not something to be embarrassed about, that skill and artistry and physical labor can produce beauty. It showed that a family business could be messy and loud and complicated and still be worth fighting for. It demonstrated that a kid from Hoboken who lost his father too young could build something lasting in his father's memory. The show introduced an entire generation to the idea that baking is an art form. It created a conversation about Italian-American identity and family culture. It made Carlo's Bakery one of the most famous bakeries in the world. And it gave us Buddy, imperfect, passionate, unfiltered, and undeniably real. The rise and fall of Cake Boss is, in many ways, the story of most things we love on television. A bright flame that burned with extraordinary intensity, drew everyone toward its warmth, and eventually burned through its own fuel. What matters is not that it ended. What matters is that for a significant stretch of American television history, it was genuinely, deliciously alive.